11-year-old Ruben Walter Rusin was considered a normal, intelligent young man. He was at the top of his class in school. In May 1968, he stepped out into a hallway and, in full view of family members, he vanished. This story appeared in the Argentine newspaper, La Cronica, and it details a bizarre incident for which there seems to be no easy explanations. It was around 6:10 p.m. Ruben, along with his aunt, Anna Devraska, and his grandmother, Susanna Laws, were heading out to go shopping. Laws and Devraska worked as housekeepers for a building on the Calle Pico, right in the middle of Buenos Aires. They had gathered their things and were just stepping out, making their way towards the stairs, when something strange happened. Ruben, standing only a few feet away from them, suddenly became enveloped in a dark cloud, right there in the corridor, and vanished. When the dark cloud dissipated, the young boy was no longer there. The two shocked women began a frantic search, alerting all their neighbors and anyone else in the district who would listen. The entire area was scoured, yet the boy never turned up. Then, 2.5 hours later, Laws and Devraska found Ruben lying in the corridor in the exact spot he had vanished. His flesh was unnaturally warm, and he had a pale red circle on each cheek of his face. When asked about where he'd been for all that time, Ruben claims that he remembered walking into the dark cloud, and then he seemed to black out. His next memory was waking up on something soft and warm, like a mattress, and being unable to move. He had the impression he was inside a spherical-type room, surrounded by lights. He felt that there was another person in the room, though he could not see them. They kept ordering him to talk. Just then, somebody approached him and touched him with very hot hands, and kept repeating the same thing. Talk! Talk! Apparently it was a Spanish spoken with an incorrect foreign accent. At that point, he felt some sort of earpiece being inserted into his ear. As this was going on, Ruben claims he could hear his grandmother and aunt calling for him, though it was as if they were far away. He had no memory of what happened beyond this point, and was surprised to hear that 2.5 hours had passed since he walked into the dark cloud. There are no other details on this case that I could find. Albert Rosales, author of the Humanoid journals, believes that this case may have been a possible unexplored abduction. While reading this story, I was reminded of another video I had made, The Returned. Similar to this case, the cases featured in that video involved people seemingly disappearing into thin air, only to reappear minutes or hours later. Unlike the cases presented in that video, though, this witness seems to have some recall of the events that transpired after he vanished. Given the bizarre nature of his disappearance, and the fact that he could still hear his family members calling for him, leads me to wonder if he somehow stepped into a type of vortex or doorway, arriving in another dimension unseen by us, but close enough that he could still hear his aunt and grandmother. In my video, I Did Not Exist in Other Time Anomaly cases, I discussed cases in which people drove or flew into strange clouds or mists, only to turn up in other places, or with huge gaps of time missing. As told in his book, Wonder in the Sky, Jacques Vallée wrote of an article penned in September 17, 1680, in which witnesses described observing a large black, cloud-like mass land in a field at which point a huge hair-covered being appeared briefly before disappearing. Maybe these clouds or mists are the key. Maybe they are these doorways or vortexes people describe. Maybe wherever these doorways lead, beings exist, the type described by Reuben. When people enter them, sometimes they come out, sometimes they don't. Might this also explain how Sasquatches, dogmen, cat people, and other strange cryptids seemingly appear out of nowhere in our world's forests, only to vanish into thin air? It's just a thought.